Okay, good evening, everyone. We might get started. Okay.
I ask you to bless this camera, allow it to be an agent of check and
I'd like to welcome, I think, Sophie, who's the new Sophie. Friends in the gallery and those who appreciate that you and watch our team. We do have a couple of apologies. Deputy Mayor Hales is an There are no items adjourned or live. First one. Second for that. .2, and that's minutes of special meeting. Anybody want? And 5. Don't have any gallery. Could ask both of them to. That would probably. Flashing.
It is now.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Perhaps if I can start with a little preliminary. The public who tune into council YouTube meetings, their channel, I should say, the council's trying to catch up with debate and decisions made, finding it more and more frustrating. As an example, consider reading a document with many of the words and phrases smudged out in the legible. The audio of the last special council meeting of the 16th of May 2 is the most recent example. The City of Victor Harbour was the first council in South Australia to live stream council meetings, but unfortunately the audio has diminished in quality year by year. I might just say that the speakers back in the gallery area either turned off or very, very low, and have been for I've been attending in the gallery, that is. Two questions were, could council please advise if the City of Victor Harbour live streaming of meetings conforms to the terms and conditions of YouTube. And the second one, is council aware that on the council's YouTube channel, the audio meetings is often inaudible? Audio of meetings is often inaudible. And will you provide an assurance to the community that council's live streaming of meetings will be raised to the highest quality and equal to local government standards?
Thank you, Mr. Charles. The City of Victor Harbour Council meetings are live streamed through Microsoft Teams, not YouTube. Following the meeting, a recording is then downloaded from Microsoft Teams and uploaded to YouTube. Victor Harbour's meeting live with YouTube's community lines. Live stream tests are run by staff on the day of each ordinary prior to the meeting commencing to ensure technology is functioning. Live stream is also cross-checked upon commencement of the ensure that it is functioning correctly. Despite this, it is possible that errors or malfunctions may occur. When this occurs, staff follow up the issue and we investigate. In addition, data connection speeds are currently in the process of being upgraded, which may improve the ICT upgrade that's happening in council. The purpose of live streaming council meetings is to enable the meeting accessible for members unable to gallery. Endeavour to continue to provide. Thank you for your question.
Thank you very much for that. It would be good if the councillor spoke directly in the microphones. They're not audible from out here.
We now move to item 8 on the agenda, the petition, Armstrong Road speed limit reduction. And the first recommendation is that council receive and note the petition. The Victor Harbour Men's Shed, moving that way, Councillor Littley. Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Littley?
I'll just say that I'm pleased that a petition has come in. It's been an issue in my mind for some time, and many members, many segments of the community have expressed such, and I'm pleased and thank the Men's Shed for bringing it to the fore.
Thank you, Councillor Littley. Councillor Roberts, speak to it. Does anybody else want to speak to the first recommendation? Those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. The second recommendation to write to the Department for Infrastructure and Transport to request a formal speed limit review of Armstrong Road between the Inman River and the Hindmarsh River to be undertaken. And I know that in December 2020, there was a speed limit review, but it was done privately and wasn't done by the department. So this one will be one that the department being requested to do. I know that elected the years that a council have been requesting that speed limit is that stretch. Are you moving by, Councillor?
I wouldn't mind moving it with a bit of an amendment or an extension to that, which actually puts a bit more force behind it. Where if I can get the support of the chamber, I'm just trying to think how it might best be worded, but that council instruct administration to write to the Department for Infrastructure and Transport to request that a formal speed limit review of Armstrong Road be undertaken. I want to put some force in there that for a speed limit change, and I don't think this is strong enough. As you said, we've asked for one in the past, so so with the request for a formal speed limit.
The requested speed limit change is down to 80, isn't it?
Yeah, then if we can put in that, if we can put in actually the speed that we request for a speed limit change to drop that speed to 80.
So if we go to write to the Department of Infrastructure and Transport to request that it forms you from 100 kilometres an hour to 80 kilometres an hour taken of Armstrong Road.
That would be sufficient, I think. I just think we need to go a little bit harder than just request a formal speed limit review, because our community has been asking for this for a long time.
Just ask Katie to put that in so that you can see what that looks like and make sure that it's grammatically correct. And then I'll ask for a seconder for that motion. So the council instruct administration to write to the Department for Infrastructure and Transport to request that a formal speed limit review from 80 kilometres is on Armstrong Road per hour, per hour on along Armstrong Road between Inman Valley Road and Hindmarsh River be undertaken.
That a formal speed limit review from 100 to 80 kilometres per hour at the approach to Crozier Road, the Crozier Road intersection on Armstrong Road. That's not the full extent of Armstrong Road, but at that intersection.
I think Councillor Littley, there's two areas that they are looking at, and that's the Crozier Road intersection, but also the the Bay Road intersection, the Wagon Road. So
Well,
I
if
think
that's the case, I'll retract my, I won't put that motion forward. I'm asking for the Crozier Road intersection. That's the one that is key.
so you want to withdraw that whole, go back to the original motion?
No, I was saying, if you were saying, I think they're looking at this, my motion is for the Crozier approach to Crozier Road intersection from 100 to 80 kilometres there. I don't see a need for it elsewhere, but my fellow elected members might. So if we can put my motion, and then if it fails, then no doubt someone else, it'll go back to the original motion.
I'm not quite sure what your motion is now.
If I get a seconder, the council instruct administration to write to the Department for Infrastructure and Transport to request that a formal speed limit review of Armstrong Road at the approach to Crozier Road, and it's from 100 to 80 kilometres at the approach to Crozier Road intersection, not any other part of the road. A review of that speed limit at the intersection or at the approach to Crozier Road.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Glasbrook? Just finalise that, make sure that Katie's got it right.
And it needs to have the from 100 to 80 kilometres per hour at that approach.
Are you both happy with the way that motion reads, Councillor Glasbrook, Councillor Littley? Happy? Jim, happy? Would either of you like to speak to that?
I will, just to say that I know that's complex, and I didn't mean it to be complex. I was thinking, because I saw on the little map here the 100 to 80 around that Crozier Road. So I was thinking it was just dealing with that and not the whole stretch of Armstrong Road. I don't think as our ring road we should have the whole stretch reduced from 100 to 80. I don't think that's productive. But that actual intersection is one that has raised plenty of comment around in the community. I don't know that the intersection or the little slip road on Green Hills Road has caused as much angst there. I think it's a different it's a different makeup, and it's people treat that quite differently because of the approach to the intersection, I guess, and that perhaps because there's a structure there as well, the bridge being over. But that Crozier Road intersection, definitely, there's been for quite some years now a cry for people for a lower speed limit into that approach.
Thank you. Councillor Glassbrook?
Oh, no, it's still flashing. Is it working? Yes, working.
Yep.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I support this. I certainly do not support reducing the speed limit anywhere else along that road at this point in time. And in actual fact, I would strongly urge council and the council administration to fight to protect this road. This road is, is a ring road. It's a road where we can scoot around the town at a reasonable speed, keep people out of Victor. I think it's was a wonderful vision from the councillors at the time and from the council at the time, and it's been a great success. And I think it's something worth fighting for. So I certainly wouldn't be in favour of dropping the speed limit anywhere else at this point in time. And I will also add that in the near future, probably when there's more and more development on Wagon Road, that council pursues developer contributions to make sure that Wagon Road is suitable to come out onto a 100-kilometre road, speed road. Because, as I say, this is a great asset to our community. The last thing, I'd like to see is what happened to Waterport Road. When I was a young person, Waterport Road was the same thing. Was a ring route around Port Elliot. It was a great asset. Unfortunately, the council allowed houses and roads to come in, and now we're crawling along there at 60 kilometres an hour. So I personally believe this is something to fight for. I would hate to see the speed reduce. I do agree that a lot of people have said the Crozier Road can be dangerous, although interestingly, the last report didn't even mention Crozier Road that was done. So obviously they didn't feel there was a lot of issues there. But I'm prepared to accept that people have trouble with it. So we need to take that seriously and reduce the speed at that intersection. But I'm certainly dead against anything beyond that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glassbrook. Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Robertson? Can you turn your microphone on, please?
I totally support what he says about making sure that this road remains a free-flowing entry into various points of Victor Harbour and is not built over and choked by speed restrictions. I don't support this because I think that what we need to be doing is looking at formal speed reviews between the Inman and the Hindmarsh River. There are 4 dangerous entry points into that road. I think the one that I pay most attention to and feel most apprehensive about is the one on Green Hills Road, because you've got to make sure your car's poked forward enough to be able to see traffic coming from Adelaide, and because the pillars of the bridge obstruct the view. And coming up the other way, you've got to make sure that when you take off from the Green Hills Road exit, do it smartly, because you're likely to find someone doing 100 kilometres an hour plus that's going to have about 90 or 100 metres of viewing of you turning onto the road with a very, very narrow takeoff lane there, before you either are going to squash them against the guardrail or they're going to come up behind you. And then there's the one down on Wagon Road, which is similarly one where you've got traffic coming from both directions at high speed. Again, that one, that one doesn't have the kind of obstruction of the view. You get quite a good view from coming out of Wagon Road onto the Ring Road, but you don't get that sort of view from across the road. I've forgotten what the road's called on the other side. But definitely we need to get the Department of Transport, if they're going to come down and do a formal speed limit review. Let's do the lot of them, because they're all interconnected. The way in which the traffic moves along that road between the two rivers is very much interconnected. If we put if you slow the traffic down in along the either side of Crozier Road, will have an impact on the speed that will have a positive impact on reducing the speed at which people go up the hill towards Green Hills Road. I think we should be looking forward to getting the Department of Infrastructure to give us a speed review of what it says here, the whole thing between Inman River and Hindmarsh River, because they're about to go into putting a sport and recreation facility, not yet quite decided where, but if it includes Gillespie's land or the land behind the TAFE, there's going to be significant ingress and egress off the road to that place. When Higginbotham decides to develop the road, the land between the Arambira and the Hindmarsh River, that will have at least one ingress or egress road coming onto Ring Road, all the time dampening down the flow of traffic onto those roads. So to me, I think just doing having a speed limit review of just one small section of that road, one of those intersections, wasting the department's time and our own. We should be looking at, as Councillor Glasbrook has said, we have a number of challenges coming up to try and keep that as a free-flowing point of entry or point of passing by Victor Harbour. I have one question as well.
You have 30 seconds left, Councillor Robertson.
Oh, I'm finished on that. Can I ask a question?
You can ask a question.
Yeah, thank you. To Director Hayter, if I might, through the chair, the proposed changes to the costs, whether they be kind of limited in relation to this, what happens on Crozier Road, or if there were other recommendations that came out of a broader study of the speed limit, are they costs that are borne by the City of Victor Harbour, or are they ones that the Department of Transport contributes to?
Through the Mayor. Thank you. So that if it's our road, our cost. So in this case, you mean the additional line marking and the signage? Yeah, our cost.
Okay. If I might ask a supplementary to that, if there was considered to be the possibility that we could do some additional works to get cars off the road more safely, off the ring road, onto any of those existing ingress and ingress points, that would be something we'd have to persuade the Department of Transport to do at their cost.
Depending which road, but yeah, generally they would need to approve any design road changes and then they'd be implemented at our cost.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Just have a bit of a query because I find it interesting to the point that the actual men's shed petition requested the following: reduce the speed on Armstrong Road from 100 kilometres to 80 per hour to cover the Crozier Road junction, but the recommendation doesn't cover it. So I'm not quite sure what happened there. It seems strange to me that they didn't get their request of up in the recommendation. I do support it because that's what the petitioners want. They want this to take place and to be covered off. I understand where Councillor Robertson's coming from, and I think, again, there's a future there that we may be looking at this. So I did write to the administration
previously, and I think Director Hayter answered me back about doing a complete review of the whole speed limits throughout the city of Victor Harbour, especially in the main business district. But she wrote back saying it should go on the strategic register, that project that may take place in 22-23, and maybe that will include Armstrong Road and complete review as well at the same time. But at the moment, I think I'm just addressing the request by the petitioners that we reduce the speed limits from 100 to 80. I drove there the other day, one at 100 k's, one at 80. It was only a few extra seconds longer to get along there, but it was certainly much slower and much safer, especially around that intersection. But I do agree, Green Hills Road, little road off to the side onto Armstrong Road is more dangerous than Crozier, but that's not what we're discussing here at the moment. But I do support this to reduce that down. It won't make much difference to travel times to people.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Mann?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Just around Councillor Kemp's comments, the petition to say reduce the speed on Armstrong Road from 100 to 80 k's per hour to cover the Crozier Road junction. And I believe that's the same as what's on the board around speed limit from 100 to 80 per hour at the approach to the intersection of Crozier Road. So just that section there. Yeah. Oh, I'm with you. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Thank you. In terms of the matter though, February last year, I had a resident request around the same issue, except their thinking was it's more because people don't know the speed on Armstrong Road and then turn out and don't realise it's 100. So they were wanting signs put on the Crozier Road as you turn onto Armstrong Road, and so that sent an email to council, which then passed that on to DIT, and then DIT came back and said we don't do that. It's only once you turn on the road that the speed limit's displayed. So, and at that same time, a similar request had gone to DIT, from my understanding from the emails from administration, and been turned back. So I think we can put this up, but ultimately whether DIT goes for it or not will lie with them. And but if history is anything to go off, I don't think we'll have much of a chance, but I'm happy to support this one. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. One of the other, somebody might like to suggest, or perhaps the administration might also be able to, at the same time writing to DIT, write to our local state parliament member, David Basham, and ask him to support the council's request to DIT, because I think that if we can get our state and federal counterparts to support the things that we need for our community and work together, we can achieve a lot more. So I don't know whether that needs a motion, but I'll just put that out to the acting CEO, whether or not a copy of the letter can go to David Basham for his support in relation to this. Do that. Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to this? Question, Councillor Kemp?
I understand that Armstrong Road meets the Australian standards of 74.2.4 speed controls. So what's the argument we're going to be using for DIT to come down and do a review to change the speed limit? And we've got it's not really clear in the documentation as to what's our argument to change it, because it meets the Australian standards.
That's exactly right. Through the Mayor, that's exactly right. So for DIT, and DIT are the only authority who can make speed changes like this, they will measure it very transactionally against the standards, against the guidelines, so it is consistent across the state. So there's no argument to be put from us other than we would like them to review. We've had requests from community, our council supports it, but in terms of technically, it'll be a very transactional review that looks at, does it meet the Australian road standards? And currently, DIT have reviewed it, I think, 3 times over several years now, probably 8 years, I think. We had an independent traffic assessment done who also agreed, DIT agreed. So there is no argument that we can make. It either meets the standards or not. Just one more thing, just that also bearing in mind that Armstrong Road is slated to be part of the Southern Freight Route. So that may also, that's something that's in the wings at the moment that the councils along the south coast are looking at, that route from essentially Kangaroo Island through to Murray Bridge as a freight transport route. So that will necessarily involve the review and potentially upgrading of all of the roads that are potentially on that freight route. And that's something that's currently before the regional bodies and eventually will go to the state as a recommendation.
So that's one of the recommendations that came from the Southern Hills Local Government Association at the, I think a couple of meetings ago, to make that a freight corridor from, as Kathy said, from Kangaroo Island all the way through down Ridge Road and then going on to the Ring Road to around the back Waterport Road down to Murray Bridge. So that will become part of a freight corridor so that large trucks are diverted from the town centres but use those back roads. So that Councillor Kemp may influence some of the findings from DIT as well. Are there any further comments or questions? Councillor Littley, would you like to close the debate?
Yeah, I will do. For the precise reasons that Councillor Mann and Director Hayter have said with regards to the review, and we can't really force DIT to do this or to act and anything, but that is why I wanted that change to this recommendation, this motion, to at least put some additional weight to it. The fact that we do seriously, we've discussed this as in the chamber, and we're hearing our community talk. I think their calls for it. I think anything we can do to support that petition and that call from the Victor Harbour Men's Shed and other members of our community who over years have been asking for some action at this intersection, we should be doing that. So hence zeroing in on the Crozier Road intersection, that junction there, rather than looking at a review of the whole ring road there was my intention there. So we could give it a vote yes here, and that sends a message there that we have heard our community. We think that it needs action, and we'd like to hope that DIT responds in that way.
Thank you, Councillor Littley. That closes debate. I'll now put that motion to the floor, that Council instruct administration to write to DIT to request that a formal review be undertaken to reduce the speed limit from 100 to 80 kilometres per hour on Armstrong Road at the approach to the intersection of Crozier Road. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. We do have a motion 2 there, which was the alternative motion. And if nobody wants to move that, or if I don't have a mover and a seconder, then that one will lapse. So does anybody want to move that second motion, that the request a formal speed limit review on Armstrong Road between the Inman River and Hindmarsh Road? You want to move that way, Councillor Robertson?
No, Mayor, but on the copy of the agenda that I have, that isn't there. Second motion isn't there.
That's the original motion.
No, okay.
No, okay, so the original motion lapses.
Yeah, point of order, that's not a motion, it's a recommendation.
I beg
The
your
motion
pardon.
was
You're right.
changed.
You're right. That recommendation wasn't taken up as a motion. So we go to the third recommendation that elected members and their head petitioner be advised of the outcome of the Department for Infrastructure and Transport speed limit review of Armstrong Road. I'd like to move that way, Councillor Kemp. Thank you. And seconded by Councillor. Are you seconding that, Councillor Robertson?
Yep.
Councillor Robertson. Do either of you want to speak to that third recommendation?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to amend that because it's not a speed limit review of Armstrong Road. It's a speed limit review of the intersection of Armstrong Road with Crozier Road. We have watered it down, the second recommendation. We're just
Well,
going
it's
for
on
one.
Armstrong Road at the approach, so it's still on Armstrong Road.
Yeah, but Armstrong Road is a long road, and the
But it's referring, Councillor Robertson, it's referring to that second recommendation, so that once we're advised of the outcome of that speed limit review, then we let the petitioner know and the elected members know.
Okay, I withdraw my seconding for that motion.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, councillor Henderson. Councillor Kemp or Henderson, would you like to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? All those in favour? Those against? We now move to item 9.1, outstanding resolutions, and the recommendation is that council receive and note the report. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, councillor Henderson, and seconded by councillor Littley. Do either of you want to speak to the report? Does anybody want to speak to the report? Councillor Robertson.
Yes, Mayor, refer to page 22, the agenda. I have three questions here. One is the second one from the top, the community and the Main Street Stage 5. The follow-up action being undertaken is the design team led by Oxygen are further working on design options as per direction of the council report and subsequent resolution. This is ongoing. This has been ongoing for a while. Is it still within the budget of Oxygen working to a budget on this redesign?
Mark? Yeah, Graham?
Through the Mayor, yes, it's still within the budget, and there will be a level of whip that will occur as into next year's budget for it as well. And you are correct, it has been ongoing for some time with our focus and emphasis on finalising and mobilising stage 4.
Thank you. The second one is the fourth item on the list there, the hard waste issue. The timeline for implementing the resolutions is still 22-23. We have reached an agreement that that the hard waste is going to be picked up by FRAWA. I'm not sure that we had actually worked out with them what the costs were going to be.
I think we were waiting for costings on a number of different options in relation to the hard waste, Councillor Robertson. They were going to look at a number of different models and then come back to us with the different costings for us to discuss. But Kathy might like to follow that up.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, you're exactly right. So when FRAWA came and presented, and then our subsequent resolution was around, it was already in FRAWA's 22-23 business plan to do a review, if you like, an audit of that hard waste collection and come up with some models that would work across the region. And so that's what they're doing in 22-23, not necessarily implementing. It's more likely they'll come back to us with those models and those recommendations for us to work through, because remember, it needs to fit the whole region to balance out what the cost is. So that's what's happening.
Okay, thank you. And then the last item on that page, it says here that this is the Community Recreation Centre Fire Services audit. Excuse me. The project has been approved to be delivered as part of the local roads infrastructure funding. Works will not be completed by the end of June 2022 due to the build time, fire tanks and MSF required stage construction. Is this project going to be, well, clearly it's going to be delivered in 2023, or is it going to be delivered within this calendar year or next year?
Thank you. Through the Mayor. So originally, as part of that grant funding, it was due to be completed by June. We've just gone back to and had informal approval from the funders, because we've been advised from the suppliers of the tanks that with the Colorbond and Zincalume shortage nationwide, apparently, those tanks cannot be delivered before October. So it's likely then that, and then from the time we can have the concrete pads ready, but obviously we need to have those tanks so that we can get one operational before we shift over to the second, because if we just take one out, there's no fire water there. So we're still aiming to have it completed by December now, but we need to wait for the delivery of those tanks. And at the moment, we're at the mercy of the supplier. So the funding body, the Commonwealth, is aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions in relation to the outstanding resolutions? If not, I'll put them to that item to the floor. The recommendation is receiving and noting the report. All those in favour? Those against? We now come to 9.2, the March budget review. This is relation to the workshop that we did last week. And I'll do that recommendation en bloc, that we receive and note the review and report. And the second recommendation, that council endorses the March budget review. Someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And seconding that, Councillor Littley. Do either of you want to speak to it? Councillor Littley, do you want to speak to it? No. Does anybody want to speak to it? Councillor Robertson?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, good work done on this by the finance staff. I refer to the memo that was sent out to us on in the elected members update last Friday about the blowout in costs of the engine shed. I have a lot of questions about that, but I'm not going to go into those right now. I'll be responding to that that letter. But here, what I am concerned about is, have the costs that are going to be incurred or may be incurred on the whale centre, are any of those going to be incurred in this month and next before the end of this financial year, and therefore are going to be in 21-22's capital expenditure?
Thank you. Through the Mayor. There's still about $46,000 left in that budget. So monies that will be spent this year doing works that are still happening will basically spend that budget. So no, there won't be any additional funds required in this financial year.
Okay. And the second question on that is, when is it likely that the building whale centre and the visitor centre will be open?
So through the Mayor, subject to, that was what was in the memo. So subject to those, that critical path to opening, the most important one is the fire safety, and that is dependent on the SA water. We need to get that flow to enable the fire system to work properly. So our fire engineer or our independent fire engineer is still working with SA Water on that, but potentially it's August, September. We need to wait for SA Water advice about their infrastructure and what we can do there. The flows don't support the minimum flow that we need to safely ensure fire for a building of that size and that many people to occupy it.
Yeah, so that was my concern, in that coming back to that issue, the opening is, if the opening is hope of opening that facility before June 30th this year, then those supply issues will have to be fixed. My understanding also, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that water pressure to the shed is not sufficient to run the water supplies for fire control, and that those expenditures that are proposed in here exceed the $40,000 is remaining in the budget. So that would mean that if there's to be any hope of getting this facility opened up before the 30th of June, we're going to have to be spending 21 CapEx in 2021, 21-22, I should say. So.
Through the Mayor, so there is no chance that the design and SA Water and then the approvals will be done this financial year. We're not even sure yet what SA Water will recommend. So we know it's not the pressure, it's the flow. So at the moment, there's only 8.5 litres per second. We need 20. And so there is 20 litres per second flow down Ocean Street. And as you might know, with all the digging up of Main Street, there was some potential there. There is a restrictor as the main breaks off and heads toward the railway building, like down railway, toward Railway Plaza there. There's a restrictor on Ocean Street that stops that flow. So if SA Water agree to shift that restrictor so that we can get the flow there, we're okay. But at this stage, SA Water infrastructure is restricting the flow, and we can't get enough flow to enable that fire system to be sufficient. So with SA Water's infrastructure involved in this, it won't be done by 30 June.
If we can perhaps keep the discussion in relation to the March budget review, I think these are really important things that you're talking about, but we do need to keep the discussion on the actual recommendations if possible. Do you have any further questions, Councillor Robertson?
No.
Councillor Kemp, you had a question?
Thank you very much, Mayor Jenkins. On page 29, the uniform presentation of finances, I was going through the figures and I noticed in the column highlighted in blue, under net outlays and new upgraded assets, the figures don't add up to the 2.679 million. There's a gap of 953,000 in the figures. All the other columns in there add up. So I'm just wondering why the total net lending, excuse me, is only 2.679, missing 953.
Kelly, can you answer that?
So about that. Through the chair, in terms of the net lending borrowing at the bottom, it's a combination of the operating surplus, which is a positive 240, plus a positive 713 under the net outlays on existing assets, and then a negative 3632 under the net outlays on new and upgraded assets. So taking all of those off, I can't quite come up to that, but I may need a calculator to help me.
Thank you. Again, it's about understanding how the figures run. I do appreciate your comments. Also, normally speaking, I believe that the total debt sometimes is, or low liabilities is always reported in the quarterly review, so we know what we're currently at debt at. So what is our total debt at the moment at fixed and cash advance debentures currently at the moment?
Through the Mayor, I can have a look in terms of the forecast for the position at the 30th of June. In terms of what's in the, that is actually outstanding at this point in time, there's approximately 7 million outstanding in fixed term loans at this point in time, and approximately $1.5 million outstanding in cash advance debentures. That is just off of my memory in the last couple of days last week when I looked up the LGFA. So that may have moved in terms of transfers that we've done at this point in time.
Thank you. And the last question is on, we're paying 286,400 at this stage for interest loan, but there's no indication of what we're paying down the principal. Any figures available on what we're paying down on the principal?
So in regards to that, we did provide a report to the audit committee that would have gone up at the last meeting in May in regards to the investments and loans and borrowings. I don't have the figure on me here within the chamber. It's something that I can provide, but without bringing my entire office with me, it's difficult for me to put my hands on that. In regards to payments, there are 2 fixed-term loans that are due to be paid down in mid-June, and that will reduce us back down to around $6 million in outstanding fixed-term loans.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions in relation to the recommendation 1 and 2? Not, I'll put the recommendation on block, recommendations 1 and 2. Floor, all those in favour? Those against? Item 9.3, we have a partial review of the delegations register. These need to be done one at a time. So the first recommendation is that council receive and note the report. Someone would like to move that way. Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconding that. Thank you, Councillor Glasbrook. Either of you want to speak to receiving and noting the report? Anyone want to speak to that? Councillor Robertson.
Yeah, I'd just like two items on the register on the handout, separate cover on page 24. That says here that it's changing. I think what's giving the an order for the section 90A, where the order that an information or briefing session be closed to the public is delegated to the CEO. I think in general that this council has puts things into confidence or closing them to the public far too often. Information and briefing sessions are ones.
These are delegations under the Local Government Act that you're talking about, Councillor Robertson?
That's it, page 24, man.
All we're doing is receiving and noting the report at the moment. When we get down to recommendation 3, then we can talk about the delegations made under the Local Government Act. Does anybody want to speak to receiving and noting the report?
Yeah, I would, Mayor. I'd just like to recognise the immense amount of work that goes into this from the staff, particularly Kyla Walker.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Yes, they do certainly do a lot of work. And thank you very much, Kyla, because it is a lot of work that you do. Does anybody else want to speak to this, receiving and noting the report? In that case, all those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Recommendation 2 is and so council hereby revokes its previous delegations to the Chief Executive of those powers and functions under the following, and I'm not going to read all of them, 1, 2, 3. As there's 13 delegations there. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Henderson.
Point of order. My point of order is, Mayor Jenkins, is if you don't read out the recommendations, how does the community know what we're debating and voting on? They don't have this information in front of them. And I think it's only proper that they understand what we are voting on and what we're debating.
The public agenda is available 5 days before the council meeting, and they're able to access the public agenda to read what that is. If it is the will of the council for me to read out every recommendation, I'm happy to do that. But you all have the recommendations in front of you. And if the member of the public is sufficiently interested in the delegation registrar and what things are being delegated and not delegated, they can read the public agenda, which is available to everybody. But it's up to the council.
I move a motion, Mayor, that that you read out the delegations.
Move a motion that I read out the delegations.
Yep.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Kemp. Are you happy with that, councillor Robertson? I'm just aware, just consult with the CEO for a moment. Would either of you like to speak to that motion?
Yes, Mayor, I would. I think that Councillor Kemp is absolutely right. When it comes to this sort of giving the scope of the work that we do in council and letting our residents know what's happening, it is important. A lot of the time, these recommendations contain great lists of things with which there isn't any apparent benefit to reading them out. But I think in terms of the delegations, it is important. These various acts which we're involved in and various activities, it's good for the residents to know.
Councillor Kemp, do you want to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Excuse me. I guess the reason why I supported this is because along those same lines as Councillor Robertson said and what I said previously, and we can't guarantee what the community reads or not read, but at least we can guarantee they'll get to hear it if on live streaming or sitting in the gallery if they had not had an opportunity to read the agenda. So I think it's only fair that we open, honest communication, I call it, to our community. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to speak to that? Councillor Littley and then Councillor Glasbrook.
I'll speak against it. I think that it's a trivial request and a trivial motion that's been put up here. It's pedantic. I do think that if anyone is watching our live stream, that generally, my opinion is that they would have the agenda open alongside it and they would be reading along here and quite entertained by this notion that they can't read the what's in front of them on their agenda, which they would be live streaming. They'll be looking at a computer screen. They have full connectivity. They must have full connectivity. They must know how to log into the council website, and they must know how to access all the information that the administration has put up there 5 days out for people to read. So I think that it's a trivial request and a bit pedantic, so I won't be supporting it.
Councillor Glasbrook, you wanted to speak?
Just a question as to the acting CEO.
Point of order first before, can I call a point of order on Councillor Kemp? Speaking over the top of a fellow councillor, directly directing to a person, a fellow member. I'll just call a point of order there. We can't have people speaking across the chamber.
Thank you. If we can please keep to meeting procedures. Councillor Glasbrook.
I was just curious as to whether there's any legislative requirement that the recommendations are read out in their full.
Through the Mayor, the legislative requirement is that the agenda be made available to the public in a way and ways and means that are accessible by the public via the provisions that we provide, which probably exceed, in fact, the legislative requirements. There's not a legislative requirement to read out each recommendation in its entirety.
Councillor Henderson.
Sorry.
Sorry, I thought you'd finished.
That was a question.
Yep.
I'm sorry. No, in that case, I probably won't support this. I do agree that there are many opportunities where we probably should read more of the recommendations that we do, but I think in this case, if people can work out what this is about from reading this recommendation, they're a lot smarter than I am, because this is, there's not a lot of information here from my point of view anyway. So I think it would probably just take a long time and achieve very little.
Thank you, Councillor Glasbrook. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Through the Mayor, I was just going to say much of what Councillor Littley has already said. I think anyone in the community listening to the live stream or listening to a recording of this afterwards will already have done their homework, and they would have looked at the agenda, They can read what's on the agenda. And quite honestly, I think we should treat our community with respect and the degree of intelligence that they have. And also, I'd like to add that reading something like this out, which I think is unnecessary, is time. Time is money.
Thank you. Councillor Mann, you haven't spoken. Do you want to speak to this? No. Councillor Robertson, do you want to close the debate? I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour and those against? That motion's lost. Thank you. So we go back to recommendation 2, which is revocation of delegation, and the having conducted a partial review in accordance with 44(6) of the Local Government Act, Council revokes the following 13 revocation delegations. Would someone like to move that way, Councillor Littley? And seconding that, Councillor Henderson. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Robertson?
Yes, I'm just trying to find I think the page 24 in this attachment is the section 90A. I think is item 7 on this list. Revocation of. Is that correct?
Perhaps Kyla, would you be able to come up and perhaps provide us with some advice around this? So item 7 is, I think, the local government procedures at meetings, which is in Appendix 47.
Motion that's before council at the moment is just revoking what's currently before council. I think the question that Councillor Robinson is referring to is probably in regards to the next one when we look at the delegations that are before members in the attachment under separate cover. I can certainly cover that in the next motion.
Thank you. And just to clarify, those local government procedures and regulations are being revoked because of the new Local Government Act? Kyla?
Sorry. Is because there's been a partial review that has been undertaken by the Local Government Association.
Yep.
The changes that have been incorporated into the review are a result of the Review Act and some errors in the details in the subsection. So they're more administration, but because it's to do with the delegations register, we need to put it back before the council. But majority that are covered under the Local Government Act are part of the Review Act that has commenced at various stages, and also with the regulations, the general regulations, and also the procedures at meeting are all part of the Review Act changes that have commenced at various stages throughout the last year. Yep. And will be coming in the next year as well.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any further questions or any comments in relation to recommendation 2? If not, I will put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Recommendation 3, recommendations made under the Local Government Act, and these are the new delegations. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Henderson. And seconding by Councillor Littley. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to any of those? Councillor Robertson.
Yeah. On page 24 of the handout, there's one here that is fourth from the bottom, section 90A, subsection 4, order that an informational briefing session be closed to the public, and the delegate for that is the CEO. Yeah. To me, as I mentioned before, I think that this council uses the closing sessions to the public more frequently than we should. We should be able to give almost all of what we have in our deliberations to the council, to the public, and where there is problems with regard to confidentiality, that we either redact those, provide them separately to members. But here, this one here is that the order that an informational briefing session, this is not a council, information and briefing session, because the public is delegated entirely to the CEO. I think that should be coming back to the council.
My understanding, and I'll ask Kyla to affirm whether or not I'm right, is that the CEO can only make things confidential if it relates to one of those parts of the Local Government Act where you can go into confidentiality. So if we're discussing a personal issue, or if we're discussing commercial and confidence issue, those issues that would normally come to council. So if she wants to give us an information briefing about a new tender that's coming up or a new business that's coming up that needs to be confidential, then she can do that. That's the briefing. So that's what that's about. There's other ones as well. Kyla, can you explain those?
So under the section that Councillor Robinson is referring to, it's not a new provision that has been included in this review. That was part of the previous full delegations review. The understanding is that the briefing or information session, that the CEO has the ability to determine whether they are confidential items that are put on a briefing session. For her to determine, or the person acting in that position needs to make reference to section 90, which is to do with personal affairs, commercial and confidence, commercial advantage, tenders. And it's more in regards to when a confidential report will be coming onto a council agenda. We will provide a briefing or an explanation at the top of the briefing session if that item is in confidence, and what section we would be using under section 90. So there is various requirements that the CEO can use. I think it would be unreasonable for us. You'd need to have a decision of the chamber to consider whether it's going to be in confidence or not. I suppose once it's gone to a briefing session and a report does come to the chamber in confidence, that's when you decide whether that item should be discussed in confidence or not when you go into your confidential orders. Does that explain?
In part, because the when the agenda is drawn up for the information and briefing sessions, which is what this is about, then if the item is in confidence, it's put in confidence before it's even printed. And therefore, when we come back, and we have from some members have various times challenged the why is this in confidence? So to me, I guess that means that what you're in fact saying is that if the CEO declares an item on an information and briefing session be in confidence, then that requires that there be a motion put up to say that it should be taken out of confidence.
So,
do you want to?
If I might, just through the mayor, the CEO and the senior staff consider long and hard whether or not an item should be in confidence when it's first presented or presented to elected members via an informal briefing session. Often the informal briefing session may be the first time that something is put before council, the first time they hear about a particular matter, and those matters sometimes necessarily have commercial and confidence provisions put around them by a party that we might be having a discussion with about any particular matter. They might be legal matters. There's all manner of things. Having said that, we also turn our minds to all the ways that Councillor Robertson just mentioned in terms of other ways that we can provide information, privileged information, that wherever possible we maintain the item in open session wherever we can. But there simply are just sometimes that we can't do that, and it's best that the confidential nature of whatever it is we're dealing with is provided by the CEO. To do it any other way would require, as I think Kyla alluded to, a council resolution, in which case it would make the whole notion of being able to work through an item at an informal briefing session without having to go through a council process and a resolution first, almost entirely unworkable. Thank you.
Any further questions, Councillor Robertson? Does anybody else have any questions or anything they'd like to say? Not, I'll put this to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Number 4, recommendation 4, delegations made under the Fire and Emergency Services Act 2005. And that's item 1 and 2. Would someone like to move that way? Councillor Littley. And seconded by Councillor Kemp. Thank you. Do either of you want to speak to that? Anybody want to speak to that? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Recommendation 5. Allegations made under Heavy Vehicle National Law, South Australian Act 2013. Moved by Councillor Littley, seconded by Councillor Henderson. Do either of you want to speak to those? Does anybody want to speak to those? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Delegations. Planning, Development and Infrastructure Act 2016, Instrument A. And that's number 6, 1 and 2. Moved by Councillor Kemp, seconded by Councillor Henderson. Does anybody have any questions or would like to say anything? Put that to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you very much, Kyla. Now move to item 4, which is the 2022-23 draft fees and charges register. I'll do that recommendation en bloc unless anybody prefers me to do them separately. Council receive and note the report and Council endorse the 2022-23 fees and charges register as provided under separate cover. Moving that way, Councillor Henderson. And seconded by, thank you, Councillor Glasbrook. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp and then Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Under the fees and charges in the additional information we have on page 2 of 26, it's got the acronym there TBA, to be advised. If we're setting fees and charges, surely we must have the costings in order to know what we're voting for in the way of costings. So there's a few of them throughout this document, and it's pretty hard to vote for something which I don't know how much it's going to cost or charge to the community.
Kelly, can you help that?
Thank you. Through the Mayor. So the ones that have TBA or to be advised next to them are ones that are set within legislation. So we're waiting on the gazettal of those items before we can fill in the fees and charges. So we don't really have a choice, or we don't have a choice in regards to some of those that are listed that way, but we'd update this prior to the 1st of July once they're gazetted by the different government bodies that deal with that legislation.
Thank you, Kelly. My second question is on page 17 of 26, meal deals. Got here money proposed fees for the Hotel Grosvenor and Nino's and Local Mexican, $25 and $35. What's that for? Are we having meals there now on Friday night?
Mark?
Through the Mayor, that's in relation to the cinema. That's the meal deals that currently exist with those business partners. So
So we
Not for the
then,
community,
as
no,
part of
so
the
the-
process, as
sorry.
council, we actually endorse and support that initiative through the cinema.
Correct.
Thank
So
you.
the business is a business of the council. So the fees and charges for the cinema sit under the auspices of the council. And so they are the fees that relate to the cinema's business.
Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Kemp. Councillor Robertson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I noticed that it was said in here at the beginning that the preamble, that the fees and charges have been raised by generally 4.7%. There's not a lot, I don't think, of raising of the charges, but by 4.7%. But I agree with that because I think that it's very important for this council that we do whatever we can to reduce our reliance or dependence, I perhaps should say, on rates for our income. And fees and charges are an important way to do that. I have a number of questions in relation to these, to the fees and charges that are here. On page, I thank Councillor Kemp for bringing up the TBA business. I didn't understand why that was TBA either. On page 5, the mobile food vendors that we have here, I think this is an important part of the activation of the city, particularly reserves and other places outside of the central part of the town. And here we have mobile food vendor monthly permits of new ones proposed of 210. I was just wondering if there were any weekly permits that were available, or were they only monthly?
Mark? Do you know, Kelly?
Thank you through the mayor. So we're not proposing any weekly permits purely because of the administration that would go along with that. It doesn't mean that we couldn't, but it would mean more of a turnover in our ability to get them out after doing all the assessments. As long as people gave us enough time, there would be an ability to do that. But we tend to find that the uptake anyway on any of these options is relatively low. And the prices have been set basically from the council resolution and then just increased this year in line with CPI or thereabouts in terms of rounding.
Yeah. Stay on the same page where it says stadium use, what does that mean? Does that mean Victor Harbour Oval or?
Through the mayor, so that's the recreation centre. So use of the recreation centre across the road.
Yeah, but the stadium is the recreation centre.
Yes, so there's 2 stadiums in there. So we have rates there based on a once-off fee, or we also have rates around local clubs that use them more regularly.
Yeah. On page 6, the top there, the Inman Hall. I presume you mean the Back Valley Hall, do you? The Inman Hall.
No, that's the Inman room for the recreation centre. If you, through the mayor, sorry, if you go back to page
Yep. Yep.
5, you'll see in that the teal coloured, I think it's teal coloured heading, is it? Yes, I learnt that over the weekend, in fact.
Okay.
But it starts with recreation centre, and then it's sort of, there's some subheadings that sit under that, so they all sit under that heading of recreation centre.
Right. Okay. Got it. Thank you. Yeah. On page 7, for the town hall hire, I'm particularly concerned about the issues here in relation to the charges that we have. One of the key issues for us as a council in building the Arts and Culture Centre is that we're not spending $18 to $20 million building it for outside performers. Primarily, it's for our own theatre companies like the South Coast Choral and Arts Society and Zest, hopefully there'll be others as well in the future. And at present, our charges for that we have for the for those companies mean that they make very little use of the town hall. They have to go out somewhere else, particularly to do their rehearsals and practices, then come rushing in at the last minute to do the setup on the stage and do the actual dress rehearsals. And so the cost to South Coast Choral and Arts Society, for instance, of $31 an hour for the for setup, rehearsals and setup, adds up to a huge amount when you consider that a normal production will take about 3 to 4 months to put up. They'll be rehearsing 2 to 3 nights a week for 4 hours at a time, and it's it means that what they have to do is go outside to go find another place that's slightly cheaper for the rehearsals, when what we should be encouraging them to do is to be totally built into their club rooms, but also into the stage such as we have it at present. And I'm suggesting here that we have a significant reduction in the cost to, at present, we've got here South Coast Choral and Arts Society, $33 per hour for rehearsals and setup, and that we make this for the period only for 22-23 of $1,000. That this is going to mean less revenue. It's precisely the opposite of what I was arguing before about trying to raise fees and charges where possible. But thinking about our future, that if we made that $1,000 for they have one production in this half in October, and Beauty and the Beast, I think, and they'll have another one next year, particularly if we are able to reduce their costs for the rehearsals and setup in particular. So what I'd be proposing here is that we charge a flat rate to South Coast Choral and Arts Society of $1,000 rather than something of the order of $3,000 or $4,000 for them. And also that their club room costs at the last line on that that also be reduced considerably, because at present they can't use it properly as a club room. They use it as a storeroom because they have to meet with their committee outside during rehearsals, and at present they're at another
You've
location.
got 1 minute, Councillor Robertson.
Yep. So my question is, can we reduce the South Coast Choral and Arts Society rehearsal and setup costs $33 an hour to $1,000 for the year?
Kelly? Through the Mayor, thank you for the question, Councillor Robertson. Council can decide to charge whatever they wish with these type of fees and charges. So it's purely up to the council. I guess a couple of things to be mindful of is around equity for other people and other users of the town hall. If there was a set fee and it included rehearsals and setup that was deemed necessary, there would be less availability for other users. And the South Coast Choral and Arts Society already have around a 15% discount with it $38 for other companies that are coming in to do rehearsals and setup. So it's up to council if council wishes to do that. I haven't done the sums or know how many hours they actually put into each of their rehearsals for each of their shows. So I'm not sure whether $1,000 is the right amount or is too little or too much. But council can decide to charge a different fee than what we have put in here.
I'd move a motion, Mayor, that the South Coast Choral and Arts Society and the Zest Theatre Company be given the charges. Yeah.
The moment, Councillor. Seconder, Councillor Littley and Councillor Henderson and Glasbrook, sorry, here we are. So you'd be wanting to move an amendment to the motion?
Yep. That includes $1,000 a year for South Coast Choral and Art Society and as Theatre Company for Town Hall for rehearsals and setup.
Kelly, what are the budget implications of that?
Through to the mayor, it would be difficult to say without looking at the hours and the bookings, because it would understandably the availability would likely go down for the town hall if there was a flat rate, but we would have to do the numbers based on tracking of other companies that use the space for similar things. Off the top of my head, but
Thank you.
acting CEO might be able to.
Yeah, through the mayor, Councillor Robertson, I think without knowing what the rehearsal needs for each of these local theatre companies would be, it's a bit hard to anticipate what the budget impact might be. I do know that they spend months and months rehearsing for a show, probably 6 months. So, and it's usually a Friday evening and a Sunday afternoon, and then as it gets closer, a Saturday as well. So there's a lot of space that you would then need to quarantine, or a lot of time across that 6 months that you'd have to quarantine for just those two organisations. Additionally, though, I think without actually talking to those organisations, I'm not sure if we're actually meeting what their need might be anyway. I think some of what they desire in terms of their rehearsals is a diversity of space, because they don't rehearse as one big group all together at the same time in the one space from the word go. The productions start with lots of small group work in various different rooms. The town hall doesn't really offer that type of space, and they generally, I would think, deliberately go out and look for other spaces that can, church buildings and things. They use the Lutheran church a lot because it does provide a diversity of spaces for them to be able to do their rehearsals. I think council would need to do a bit of work and research first, and a bit of consultation with those groups to understand their needs before it got too reactive about what the fees and charges might be.
Thank you.
If I might respond to that,
Sorry, can I just see whether or not you've got a seconder for this and whether we're going to move ahead with this amendment to the motion, and then if we are going to move ahead, you'll have an opportunity to speak, Councillor Robertson. Do I have a seconder for Councillor Robertson's amendment? Councillor Kemp?
Mayor Jenkins, I'll move to adjourn the motion to the June meeting so administration can find the information to support or not support the amendment of this motion.
Before you do that, we need to see if there's a seconder for the motion.
Let's move to formal motion.
We just moved a formal motion to move it. Have a look. Don't have, yeah, there's no motion up. There's no motion up at the moment because Councillor Robertson doesn't have a seconder. So are you moving a motion to the formal motion that's on the floor, Councillor Kemp?
We've already moved the original motion, so I guess I'm adjourning the whole 9.4.
You're adjourning so you're adjourning 9.4. Okay, do I have a seconder to adjourn 9.4 to the next council meeting? Councillor Robertson seconding that. Does anybody want to speak to it who hasn't spoken to 9.4? It's a formal motion. Don't. Done that. All right. All those in favour, Councillor Mann? Question?
Just to administration around any impacts or I guess, detriment to the community around putting back the draft fees and charges for a month.
Kelly?
Through the mayor, so we do have some time, so that shouldn't be too much of an issue. I guess the only question for me would be whether this is the only item that needs discussion. So if there was more hold-ups, we may not have fees and charges set for the 1st of July, that's all.
There's no further questions. I'll put that formal motion in item 9.4 to next month. All those in favour? And those against? That's lost. Thank you. I'll just wait for Katie to catch up.
Move a division, thank you. Call a division.
All those in favour of adjourning the item? Councillor Kemp and Councillor Robertson. Against? Councillor Henderson. Councillor Mann. Councillor Littley and Councillor Glasbrook. That motion is lost. So we go back to your amendment, Councillor Robertson. Is there a seconder for Councillor Robertson's amendment? Councillor Kemp? Yep, okay.
Just a question. Would, if this is endorsed this evening, would it be possible for us to move a motion on notice to change those particular fees at the next council meeting?
Through the mayor, yes, that would be possible. We can also just put it up as a separate council report if council, if we're moving this one first in terms of this particular fee is changed, it would be, we could change the original motion essentially to say subject to the updates for this item. So if the recommendation was South Coast Choral and Art Society and Zest Theatre to be granted a fixed fee of $1,000 for town hall hire, then once we go back to the original motion with the full fees and charge schedule, it could be endorsed subject to that change. Does that make sense?
Yes, so it could be endorsed. So the original motion, sorry, I didn't explain that. If the original motion was passed, there would be no reason why we couldn't bring back a motion. No, that's right, to change it at a later date anyway. This is not set for forever.
That's right.
It could be changed at any point in
Change
time.
it any time. Yep.
So we probably could just, for the sake of getting on with it, we could just endorse this and then bring it back to the next council meeting. Yeah.
The concern I have with that second motion, and I absolutely understand your what you're wanting to do, is that the way that reads, theoretically, South Coast Choral and Art Society and Zest could say, we want to hire the town hall for the next 8 months, and they only pay $1,000, and we have to cancel all other bookings. That's the way that reads. So there may be better wording. No, I'm not. I'm trying to provide information so that you can make up your mind. I really don't want, as a council, I don't want us to move a motion that isn't properly understood in terms of the consequences. We don't have Councillor Kemp has seconded that motion. And I'll ask Councillor. And then Marilyn and then Brian.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. The reason why I'm supporting as seconder, I think, you know, we need to support our local productions, their volunteers. And I think it's great to minimise their costs and their overheads so they can put on productions. If only putting on 2 productions a year, I don't see it as a major problem, setting a fee of this amount. They may put 3 on, but I wouldn't see them putting on any more than that. But that's why I support, because they are local people, they are volunteers, and I think, you know, we should support them.
My question is, what do we do when a third theatre company comes along and they're not included in this motion? It's a possibility. I think we're being too presumptuous on behalf of these theatre people. I think it would be better left to them to negotiate a special fee if that need should arise. I don't think we should be prescribing how much occupation they have at the town hall and setting fees accordingly. I think it should come from the theatre groups themselves. They know what their needs are. We don't. And I think it's just presuming a lot that we don't need to.
Councillor Littley?
Yeah, I'll go one step further than Councillor Henderson has there. What if we do get a third? Sorry? No? Yeah. What if we do get a third theatre company that wants the same deal? Or worse, what if we don't get a third theatre company because these 2 theatre companies have locked up that space? That would be the worst outcome possible, that an emerging group doesn't feel like it has the same ability to access that space, a key space, to set up and establish a theatre company and then to go in there and use the space because it's already locked up by 2 existing active groups that have worked away and, as we say, more than likely perfectly happy with a 15% reduction in the rate that they've already got. They already have a competitive advantage over other, you know, we've given them that advantage because, yes, they are volunteers and they are a valued part of our community. We can't set a precedent. What's it start with the town hall hire, and then does it go to other clubs as well, other venues that we've got people working through there, community groups trying to access them in the higher fees? I just think that it's setting a dangerous precedent and it's restrictive in building our arts.
Thank you, Councillor Littley. Councillor Mann, you haven't spoken. Do you want to speak to this? No. Do you want to close the debate, Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm appalled at the level of ignorance that I've just been hearing.
Councillor Robertson, please
Yeah.
address the debate rather
I'm
than
going
people's
to address the
personality.
debate, Mayor.
There's no need.
Please don't interject.
There's
Point of
no
order.
need
Please,
to
point of order.
There's no need to call elected members ignorant. Address the issue and not the person, please.
This proposal up here is for 2022-23 only. This is for the fees and charges register for next financial year, not forever. We are lucky to have 2 theatre companies operating in Victor Harbour. We would be struggling in the next 3 to 4 years to get a third. We are struggling to keep the 2 that we have now afloat because of the costs that they've suffered, not only in terms of the loss of their players and actors that they have, but also loss of income that they've lost because of having overhead costs, no productions. They have one production coming up, Beauty and the Beast. I hope we see some of the councillors around the table here at the next production that they put on. That we have to make sure that we are setting the conditions, and I have spoken to Julie Kelly today, who's the president of the South Coast Choral and Arts Society, and the reason that they go to the Lutheran Hall for rehearsals because it's cheaper than the town hall. So what are we doing? Cutting off our nose to spite our face to have, you know, our own theatre company, which has been housed in that building for 70 years, goes elsewhere because we're charging them too much. Because they don't have the money. And they've got to start rebuilding their theatre company almost from scratch because of what's happened over the last couple of years. So this is a way of which we can go ahead and charge these fees. They don't consider themselves lucky that they've got a 15% discount, whatever. They have to go elsewhere, and it disrupts entirely the proper rehearsal process for a quality production. That's what we need to be doing in this city, is to encourage those theatre companies that are here and are trying their best to produce quality theatre. And because we're not spending 18 to $20 million on a arts and culture centre for outsiders. We're building it for our own people. And if you think that this, $1,000 or some made up amount of money, that's too much, then just wait till you get on in a couple of years' time onto voting for the operating costs for this arts and culture centre and what it's required to provide out of the ratepayers' taxes for the operating costs, which will include boosting the performances of the theatre company. So to me, I have done the sums on that, as Graham Hadhouse well knows. It's 3 to 4 months, sometimes 6, depending on the size of the production, 3 to 4 months, and they have to, they're practicing at least 2 times a week in the first few months, and then up to 4 times a week, 4 times a week during the final month. And they have to go outside of the town hall to do their rehearsals and then come back in the last minute. We need to be making sure that we are affordable, and you come up against this same argument after we build our whiz-bang new arts and culture centre, that, how much are we going to be charging the local theatre companies who simply don't have.
You're wrapping up debate, Councillor Robertson, not introducing new information. That finishes that debate. The amendment is that the Choral Arts Society and Zest Theatre be charged a fixed fee of $1,000 per year for town hall hire within the 2022-23 fees and charges register. All those in favour? Those against? That amendment's lost.
Full division, please.
All those in favour? Councillor Kemp, Councillor Robertson. Against, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Mann. Councillor Littley. And Councillor Glasbrook. That amendment is lost. So we now go back up to the original motion. That was moved by Councillor Henderson and seconded by Councillor Glasbrook.
Now I have some more questions.
Can you just hold on a moment, please? Yeah, it was done en bloc. If you. The person who moves or seconds an amendment, and if he or she chooses to do so, speaks to the amendment, will in doing so be taken to have spoken to the motion to which the amendment relates. So Councillor Robertson and Councillor Kemp, who've moved and seconded the amendment, you've taken to have spoken to the motion.
I said I had a question, Mayor, not of speaking to them.
If it is a specific question, Councillor
Robertson.
Robertson.
Mayor. A
All right.
question, Mayor, is a question.
Thank you.
Yeah. I turn to page 19 of this fees and charges schedule. I have a question for Director Padhouse through the Mayor. It's disappointing from the local government point of view that so many of these charges here are legislated by or gazetted.
What is your question, Councillor Robertson?
I'm coming to the question.
Yeah, I know you've had a long preamble. You need to ask your question.
Director Padhouse, do we get any of the revenue that comes from all of the building fees and assessments that are on pages 19, etc.? We share in any of that? Do we actually recover any of that money, or is it all going to the Planning Commission and then we get any share of that?
Through the Mayor, by and large, council recovers all of the fees with the exception of lodgement fees. So there's a lodgement fee, which is a small portion of the fee, not the majority of the fee. That's retained by the state government for the operation of the portal, essentially, and their side of the activity.
And secondly, the question would be the fees and charges that are here on page 19, for instance. Do those cover our costs of servicing those activities?
No, through the Mayor. No.
Would they cover half the costs?
Maybe getting close. Don't know the exact detail. Kelly might, but
through the Mayor, we did an exercise a few years back to see what it would look like for us to cost recover, and it would have required almost doubling the fee in terms of having that town planning and building activity areas come out as a cost neutral exercise. So with them being legislated, we can't recover the whole amount.
Okay.
Councillor Henderson, do you want to close the debate? I'll put this to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Mayor Jenkins, could I add an extra motion, please?
Could you, sorry?
Add an extra motion.
Yeah, sure.
Is it council administration investigating opportunities to reduce the cost of the town hall to the local theatre groups? Because I do agree with the sentiments of my fellow councillors, but I just didn't agree with the way that it was put forward, because I've got no idea if $1,000 is cheap or expensive or what. So it's just if that could be investigated, and if we can change, if it requires a motion at next meeting, I'll be happy to move it just to change that one cost to this register. That
sounds like a good idea, Councillor Glasbrook. So that council administration investigate opportunities to reduce the costs of the local theatre, costs to the local theatre groups that utilise the town hall.
That'll be fine, thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Would someone like to second that? Councillor Henderson, thank you. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Glasbrook, any further? No. Councillor Henderson, do you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? No. In that case, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's passed unanimously. And I'd just like to say, I think that that's a terrific motion without relation to that, because it provides an opportunity for administration to cost out some of those opportunities and to look at that in a very holistic and planned way. So thank you very much for suggesting that. So 9.5 we come to, which is the Community Satisfaction Survey, the analysis report. The first recommendation is that council receive a note, and the second recommendation is that council notes an action plan will be developed following further analysis and include stakeholder consideration. And I'd just like, if we could just add to that second recommendation, and come to council, return to council for endorsement. Thank you. Would someone like to move those two recommendations on block? Councillor Henderson, thank you, and Councillor Littley. Do either of you want to speak to them? No, does anybody want to speak to them? Councillor Glasbrook and then Councillor Kemp.
I just have a question. I know it says in here that this report will be released to the public. I'm just wondering how that would be. Is it on the website? I mean, it's not part of the public agenda. So I was just wondering how this report will be released to the community.
Kelly?
Thank you through the Mayor. So whilst it was under separate cover, it's not particularly confidential, except that we would like to put some wording around that once we have done a little bit extra analysis so that we can actually say what we're going to do with it going forward to provide that holistic view. So that will be part of the action plan in terms of releasing that data and having the accompanying context around what we're going to do with it as well. So once those works were done, it would be available on the website and other means that we have, whether it be social media or otherwise.
Just had a question then. Thank you. Do you have a timeline at all roughly on that?
Through the Mayor, so we'd expect at least a couple of weeks, probably more like a month, depending on other competing priorities, but we'll be looking at doing some work on that in the next few weeks.
Kelly, can I follow up on that question? When we're looking at coming to council for endorsement, would that be at the next council meeting, would you think, or would be the one after that? Because I imagine that would be the public commentary that would be coming.
Through the Mayor, we would probably like to, once we've done the extra analysis and the draft action plan, actually bring it to a workshop first before going to a council meeting, so that we can iron out any details within there that elected members would like to see occur in line with that. So it's probably a little bit too quick to have that ready by mid-June at this point. So we would probably be looking at a mid-July with coming to council in July.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Look, no, Councillor Glasbrook beat me to the gun on that one, and I was going to ask the similar questions. I guess the only additional question I would ask would be, if a member of the community, once it's released, wanted a hard copy, would there be a charge, or under the standard current fees and charges for getting hard copies of council documents?
Through the Mayor, so there is a charge for hard copy documents. Obviously, it would be available once we release it on the website, but there is normally a charge for any documentation that people come in and ask for, mostly because of the staff time taken to do that, as well as the photocopying cost. So we would have to abide by council's current fees and charges.
Are there any further questions or any further commentary? In that case, I'll put that recommendation on block to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? Carried, thank you. Item 10.1 is the Fleurieu Peninsula Tourism Funding Agreement 2022 to 25. And I'll do that recommendation on block in case, unless anybody prefers me to do it separately. Somebody like to move that on block? Thank you, Councillor Littley. And seconded by? Thank you, Councillor Mann. Do either of you want to speak to that? No, does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I sort of wonder sometimes whether we actually get any value out of supporting this Fleurieu Peninsula Tourism Agreement over the next 3 years at $36,500 per year CPI indexed. I think tourism is an interesting thing because, you can have websites, you can have other ways of promoting your organisation, your town, your facility. Why pay someone else in that context. Considering now we've got with Business Victor Harbour a branding program going, economic development, and we are promoting our town and our district anyway. So I went onto the website of the Fleurieu Peninsula Tourism website and did a bit of a scattergun approach to what's on there. And I came across this page called What's on in the Fleurieu. And out of those 29 sites, Songparinga had 13 pages up. Alexandrina had 4. Yankalilla had 6. Willunga had 4. And Victor Harbour had 2. So to me, we're not getting value for money. I think we should put our money into our business for branding and develop our own sites and get the same input from people visiting that way instead of relying on this organisation, which again, we're not getting value from that page anyway, my perspective. So I'm not supporting this recommendation to support this group anymore. I think we could spend our money internally to promote our town and our community better.
Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Glasbrook.
Yeah, I haven't actually looked at the site as Councillor Kemp has, so I was a little bit disappointed to hear that figure, but I suppose it's only one page. I don't know if you've got anything to answer about that. I
suppose Songparinga is the biggest council in the state, so if they've got 13 things on as compared to us, little one having 2.
Yeah, we need to make sure that we get our money's worth, I suppose. I do agree with Councillor Kemp. I was present at the presentation we had recently, and it was disappointing that there were, quite a few members weren't there because they had other engagements. But I've always been of the opinion of Councillor Kemp, and I don't think I've ever voted for this yet, because I do believe that we probably spend the money better. But I have to admit that I had a very good glimmer of hope after that last presentation that things had changed to the better. I think the new chair and the gentleman that was doing a lot of the on the ground work seemed to be doing a very good job and were very enthusiastic, and seemed to be a lot of positive thoughts. So I was nearly thinking about supporting this, but I don't know. Is there any way that they sort of split the funds up to ensure that each council gets their money's worth?
Got to be me. No, through the mayor. I agree with your sentiments. They're in a very good place at the moment. In terms of equity across the region, it's always a vexed issue. They now have a member of the local industry on their board, which is Kirsten Pittman from Nino's and Business Victor Harbour. So I guess of any time in the recent times that we've had representation on the FPT board, now is it. I would sort of also, we've had recent discussions with them about them actually having a seat in our office in the new VRC building going forward, 1 or 2 days a month, so we can ensure that the priorities of the council are actually being included within the programming of FPT, and that got a very receptive welcome from Dylan Beach. So I think going forward, as we settle ourselves in our digital marketing area, which will happen over the next 12 months, we'll be in a better place to actually advocate for our inclusion into their programming. So to answer your question.
Yes, through the mayor, if I could just add to that a little bit, and I agree with Mark and others, Councillor Glasbrook, that I feel that the current iteration of the board and the way the governance of that works, bearing in mind that it's changed recently, is in a better position than it's ever been to deliver for all of the councils across the region, including the City of Victor Harbour. And elected members might recall that we have gone through the last, the current period rather, the current agreement period of 3 years, going through a process of review. Can't remember all the terminology now, but reviewing the governance structure, reviewing the board structure, and implementing changes to put the organisation in the best position it possibly can. Council supported that, supported the changes all the way through and adopted the changes or supported along with the other councils of the region, the changes. For that to work, it now relies on all of the councils to continue to support that, at least for the next term, to put that in place. Just a few thoughts to go with it.
Thank you. Councillor, any further questions, Councillor Glasbrook?
No further questions. No, I think I will support it. I was pleasantly surprised at the change. I mean, I've sat through those presentations for, 7 years previously and got nothing at all from it, I have to say, and honestly felt that it was a waste of money. I can say that. But I did sense that there was a strong change, and they do, what they should do with this money. I think we'll get a lot of benefit out of it. So give them a try.
Thank you. Councillor, if you speak.
Doesn't look like anyone else wants to speak. Yeah, I'm pleased to hear, Councillor Glasbrook, that you are impressed with the board and that, because knowing some of the personnel on that board, and that I have great confidence that there's members on there that will bring something quite good to the whole region, and in particular, given that we've gone through what we have with Business Victor Harbour and our Breathe campaign, and we're sitting very well set up in our own right as far as our digital presence, and we know which direction we're going, and I think that we're only going to reap rewards now from collaborative sort of work with Fleurieu Peninsula Tourism. So I think hang in there, have confidence in them, because I think that knowing some of the personnel on that board, they will deliver for us.
Thank you. That closes debate. And I'll now put that recommendation on block to the floor. All those in favour and those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now move to the Reflect Reconciliation Action Plan. There's 2 recommendations there, which I'll do on block. But before we start, I'd just like to pass on my thanks to Leanne and her team and the staff that have been involved in this reconciliation action plan. I think they've done some amazing work with some of our Indigenous partners, and I believe you've been to the last couple of meetings too, Councillor Robertson, for that. And I was going to the meetings that I was able to get to. So it's been a really collaborative work between the council elected members, between the council staff, and between our Indigenous community as well, and Reconciliation Australia. So please pass on our thanks, Leanne. So the recommendation, if we do that on block, would someone like to move that way? Councillor Henderson? And seconding that, Councillor Robertson. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Henderson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just to reiterate what you just said, a lot of very hard work has gone into this, and I think Leanne Simmons has done a fantastic job.
Thank you. Councillor Robertson? Does anybody want to say anything? Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Yes, I support this. I went to the last community group meeting with the various groups with Leanne there, and it was quite interesting and quite enthralling to hear the different people speak about the whole process of reconciliation, and the main message that came out was about we will do it, not individuals or different groups. There will be a we process. So I thought that was fantastic. So I contributed my little bit, and it was great. So really endorse this, and I hope it really gains momentum.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with you. And this is the first of our action plans. So this is the first stage, which is the reflecting action plan, and there will be more to follow. So does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Glasbrook?
Well, it's more a question. In a way, I certainly support this, and yeah, appreciate all the work that's been done. In relation to the information here in relation to employing First Nation people, I was just a little bit concerned. I mean, I would imagine, well, I know that we're an equal opportunities employer, and race and all that shouldn't come into it. Is it appropriate to give bias to one group over another group, for example? That's do you know what I'm trying to say? I'm not trying to be negative.
No, the government have a lot of different employment schemes. So they have, for example, youth employment schemes where they encourage people to employ young people, disability employment schemes where they encourage people to employ people with various disabilities, and also Aboriginal employment schemes. So these schemes look at groups in our society that perhaps need extra help in terms of getting employment, and so the different schemes, it's a positive discrimination for different groups, so that they can get a leg up in terms of their employment. So it's part of those employment schemes that are there.
Look, I understand that, but there would be many groups out there like that. There'd be
Well, they target, the Equal Opportunity Act actually targets, and the government employment scheme, public service employment actually targets specific groups, such as youth, Indigenous people, people with a disability. Those are the three that are specifically targeted. Are there any other questions or comments? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's unanimously passed. 10.3, we have event application, which is the 2023 Sid James Victor Harbour Triathlon. And I could do all three on block because they all relate to each other. Unless somebody wants them done separately. But would someone like to move them on block? Recommendation 1, 2 and 3. Thank you, Councillor Kemp. And seconded by Councillor Henderson. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I do support this. I think it's a long time coming for the residents of Encounter Bay around the lake area. They've been impacted for many years, and most of the residents do support Sid James, but now it's been taken up by another group. They're using his name. I was talking to residents around that area the last time we had the triathlon then. It was over 2 days, and it really impacted where it locked people in for 2 days. Oh, they got stayed out all day. So moving this to a new venue gives some reprieve. Maybe still impacted by some there, but it won't be the same getting out of their door. So I do support it, and I think putting it into the new venue in that area, I think it will attract more people, and that will bring more people to the town. Hopefully that will get people to spend more money. This is what the events are all about. So I think it's a great initiative to move it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp, and I couldn't agree with you more. And perhaps we could take this opportunity to say thank you very much to the residents from around Encounter Lakes who have over the last, I think 7 years or 28 years, 28 years, wow, have been impacted by the triathlon in that area. And certainly over the last 28 years, that has grown from quite a small event to a very large event that is impacting on more. And with the move to Wallen Reserve and to the closer to town, that has the opportunity to grow even more and to put Victor Harbour on the map for even Ironman triathlons and international triathlons. So I agree with your sentiments very much, Councillor Kemp. And Councillor Henderson, sorry, would you like to speak?
Yes, I was going to say this has been a major successful event for many years. I hadn't realised it was quite 28 years, and that is just fantastic in its own right. That's been successful for so long and deserves to carry on and be successful into the future. And well done to all of those who have organised it in the past and for the future organisers.
Thank you. Councillor Littley, you want to speak?
I certainly realise it's been 28 years because I competed in the first one. I couldn't walk it now. I think this is a fantastic event. It's a fantastic move for the event. It is great to see it grow like this. It's been growing and survived the last couple of years where there's quite a few pressures on. So to get a major event in the heart of our city celebrating like this, it's going to be fantastic. So fully supportive of it.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to this? If not, I will put it to the floor. Do you want to say anything else, Councillor Kemp, to close the debate? It's not really much debate in there. Thanks. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. The Southern Hills Local Government Association Draft Regional Public Health Plan, Community Consultation, that's 10.5. I'll do that. Oh, sorry, I missed 10.4. Oh, here we are. 10.4, the Victor Harbour Community Grants Program. I'll do that recommendation on block unless anybody wants to do it separately. On block, Councillor Henderson? Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Littley? Either of you want to speak to it? Councillor Littley, do you want to speak to it? No. Councillor Kemp?
Excuse me. I declare a perceived conflict of interest in this agenda item. As I'm a member of the RSL Victor Harbour branch, I'll stay in the room and I'll still vote for it because I gain no personal gains out of this.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Have you got a conflict of interest form? Beautiful, thank you. Anybody have any other comments? I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. Southern Hills Local Government Association Draft Regional Public Health Plan. I'll do that recommendation on block. This is being held up because the public health plan has to go to the Minister for Health for endorsement prior to it going to community consultation. Given the new government in South Australia, the minister's having to be briefed on it, and so it's actually been with him for quite a while, and we're not sure when it will be coming back from him for community consultation. So that's why the process is a bit, it goes to the minister, then it comes back for community consultation, then we do the final draft and it goes back to the minister again. It's a bit of a session. So this is something that the Southern Hills Local Government Association has been working with, and one of the things that they've been doing so that each council in that particular local government area doesn't have to do their own individual community health plan. They've actually hired a consultant. So between Victor Harbour, the Hills, Alexandrina, Kangaroo Island and Yankalilla and Mount Barker, they have done a community health plan that actually incorporates the needs of all of those councils as a whole, and also has addressed the needs of individual councils within that. So that's been one of the big jobs that we've been doing with the Southern Hills LGA, and it's now with the Minister. Would somebody like to move that recommendation on block? Councillor Henderson, thank you. And do a seconder for that. Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Do either of you want to speak to that? Councillor Henderson?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say what an extremely comprehensive and impressive body of work this is. And I'd like to congratulate all of those involved in the production of this document. The plan exemplifies the benefits of working regionally. The plan not only identifies the state of our public health and wellbeing in our region, but also the emerging public health issues and the regional challenges that are faced. And reading this document, it makes it made me at least realise that everything, all the decisions that we make in the chamber have an effect on public health and well-being. Everything from a broken footpath or the lack of a footpath and putting in a new footpath to addressing climate change is incorporated in our public health plan. And throughout the document, I couldn't help noticing also that the words public health plan and well-being are used synchronously right through the document. I was just wondering if it should have been called the public health and well-being plan, as those words are used synchronously throughout the whole document, as I say. So as I said, it addresses the physical, social, emotional health and well-being of all the residents of the region. And I think it's a very good plan, and I'm sure the Minister will give it a big tick.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Councillor Kemp, you wanted to, no? Didn't want to speak? Sorry. Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Robertson, did you want to speak to it? No? In that case, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Can we just do that again? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. We have a 15-minute break. Right with everyone. It smells a bit smoky in here. We might just investigate where that's coming from. So hands up if you're happy for a 15-minute break. Yep, beautiful. I'll see you at 8 o'clock. Normally we have a break at 8 o'clock for the meeting, but given that we've had a break at 1:45 to look at the, look for the smoke, you don't need another break at 8 o'clock? Sorry, that's now. Yeah, I know. But I better ask you, because it is in the meeting procedures to have a break at 8 o'clock. We have had one at 1:45. So I just better check that you don't want it. You happy to come back? Yep, beautiful, thank you. And the smoke is just from the fires outside, people's keeping warm. And because the air conditioner is on, it's bringing the outside air in and the outside air smoky. So that's what that's from. So meeting recommencing at 8 and we're up to the 11.1, the Corporate Systems Implementation Project Update. And really this is just an update report. And would someone like to move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Kemp. And seconding that, Councillor Robertson. Do you want to speak?
No, yes, I do. Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I just want to say that had a meeting the other day and Councillor Robertson invited me along as well to meet Karen. And it was great. And Kelly was there as well. And it was great to have a conversation about it. And certainly more updates will be coming. But it appears that while we're going down a certain pathway, it makes logical sense now. So I think before, not knowing what was happening, but I believe the chamber and the staff, I believe, once this process is up and running and the systems are in and the changeover is done, excellent with the great project team that's been put together, apparently. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Councillor Robertson, do you want to speak to it?
I totally agree with what Councillor Kemp said on that. On page 160 here, we've got the and it is a well organised program here. I just have a couple of issues that I wanted to highlight here. One was that the proposed project completion date is, you can see on page 160 in the top table, is 30th of June 2024. And I think, we really want this to be a quality product, and it takes years to get these things done properly. And so I'd be happier for us to be working to a June 2025 schedule. And then if we came in June 2024, then you come in, you've beaten the deadline, which looks better than overshooting it. And yeah, we have the we're getting a really full-on briefing on the 7th of June, in a week or two's time. Just one question here, if I might, on page 161, that as at the 30th of April, we'd spent $334,000 of the $805,000 budget for this year. How are we, if I might ask the Finance Director, and how are we travelling with the expenditure? Are we likely to be fully expended to 805,000 by the time 30th of June comes?
Through the Mayor, we're still looking through the final numbers. There has been a considerable amount that has gone through the books in the last couple of weeks. I know because I've signed off on them as they've been going through. So we would be looking to have a look at that and provide an update at that 7th of June presentation in terms of how we're tracking for end of year. So just finalising and getting into place all the different contracts and support that we need, and we'll have a better picture at that presentation. But there may be some that needs to be carried over into next year, but exactly what we'll have a better picture of later.
Is there any further commentary in relation to that item? If not, I'll put it to the floor. All of those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 12.1 landowner consent, proposed alterations to the store Harbour Rec Centre. Once again, block, that's recommendation 1 and 2, if somebody would like to move that. Thank you, Councillor Kemp. And seconded by Councillor Mann. Councillor Kemp, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think it's a good initiative, considering if the minister meets the costs to it, to make the alterations, which would be fantastic, because the rec centre is a little bit sad in its days. So I mean, any improvement would be fantastic. So I think, yes, support this and see how much we can improve it in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mann.
Just quickly, my understanding is that this has been a project that's, whilst seems to be starting now, has been going on for quite a while. So it'd be good for elected members to support this and encourage that use. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Does anybody else want to speak to this? Councillor Robertson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yes, indeed, this particular use of this storeroom has been a constant item on the agenda of the High School Governing Council for the last few years that I've been on that, and yeah, it's goodness knows what the cost is going to be to the it's being met by the Ministry of Department of Education, Ministry for Education, but it's taken several years to get to this level, but yeah, it's very good that it has actually happened.
Thank you. If there's no further commentary, I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Speed limit review on Fuller West Road, and the recommendation we can do on block, receiving and noting the review, and the council supporting the Department of Infrastructure and Transport's recommendation to lower the speed limit to 60 kilometres an hour. Moving that way, Councillor Littley, and seconding that, Councillor Henderson. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Littley?
Oh, just to say that I have had a resident of that area raise concern about the road, so I'm pleased to support this.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, do you want to say anything? Does anybody want to say anything? I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? That's carried. We have the 12.3, the Recreation and Sports Small Grants Round 2. I'll do the first 3 on block, and then I'll do the fourth one separately, because people might want to. You want happy to do them all on block, Councillor Littley? The 1, 2, 3 on block or separately? In the fourth one, yep. Would someone like to second that? 1, 2, 3 on block? Councillor Mann? Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Littley? Yep. Councillor Mann, do you want to speak to it? No. Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Robertson?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the item 3, which I'm very happy that the committee went back into the issue of acquittals for grants. I think that on our grant programs that we don't do enough of this, of making sure that people report back or account for their money. And I think, yeah, I should also, the point 4 was, yeah, the fourth one. The other one is disappointed though that the RDA was one of the beneficiaries of this program, but they made no contribution. I think that should be an important part of building the capability of these sporting clubs, building their capacity to be resilient, that they contribute, hopefully at least 50% from and what they're asking for. And I think it's unfortunate that for whatever the reasons, the RDA one, that council's paying the full tote odds for the rain sheets and rugs.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Does anybody else want to speak to the recommendation? Councillor Glasbrook?
Yeah, just for the record, I do agree with Councillor Robertson. There was a few there that didn't meet the criteria and they were still endorsed. I thought that was surprising.
Any further discussion? Councillor Littley, do you want to close the debate?
Yeah, just to respond to a couple of those things that were brought up. The criteria, and we were aware as a committee and discussed at length where some of the applicants may not have met the criteria, and it was deliberated on for some time, and we came up with the justifications for each of those meetings, for this granting of these or recommending they be granted. I can't think for each point that we did, Councillor Glasbrook, but I could go back and remind myself of those points, and we get those in. Councillor Mann might be able to help me on some of them, but it was a few weeks back and a lot's happened since then. But we certainly did go through and assess against the criteria and did recognise that there were some areas of criteria that would be questioned, and I can give you some confidence, Councillor Glasbrook, that we did come up with relatively good reasons for granting these or recommending these, and of course it sits with elected members whether they put it through as well. But happy to look back at that if you want some verification, clarification on each point why we came to those decisions.
Not unless you've got a question, Councillor Glasbrook. There was closing debate. So I'll put the recommendation 1, 2 and 3 on block to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? Okay, I'm making a casting vote. I'm going to vote in favour. And the reason that favour is that I have significant the word I'm looking for. I endorse the working group that looked at this. I think that as elected members, you don't take these things lightly, but do go into it. And I do have significant confidence in the group that assess these grants, and they're not always easy to assess. And if we want to support our clubs and our volunteers, then sometimes we do need to look at things, and sometimes clubs and volunteers aren't that good at filling out forms. So I move with that. The fourth recommendation is that council does not endorse the individual grant for the under 18 boys national hockey championship because this particular person, it's his fourth grant application. Would somebody move that way? Thank you, Councillor Littley, and seconded Councillor Robertson. And I note that this person's brother actually did receive a grant for the hockey championships. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Littley? Yep. Councillor Robertson? No. Does anybody want to say anything? No, I'll put it to the floor then. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. So we now come up to the minutes of council committee meetings, and the first one is the Southern Community Transport Scheme Advisory Committee. And once again, a big congratulations to the Scots Transport team and all their volunteers They had their 30th anniversary last week as part of Volunteer Week. Both Councillor Henderson and I attended that. And there's some amazing volunteers, some that have been volunteering for the whole 30 years that that scheme has been administrated. And so they've done a fabulous job. The recommendation is that council receive and note the minutes. Moving that way, Councillor Henderson, seconding that. Councillor Mann. Anybody want to speak to the minutes? Those in favour? Against? The Fleurieu Regional Community Services Advisory Committee minutes. Someone like to move that way? Councillor Henderson. Do I have a seconder for that? Is that your hand up, Councillor Kemp, or are you just scratching? Thinking. I wasn't sure if you're happy to second that. I wasn't sure if you're putting your hand up or not. Seconded by Councillor Kemp. Anyone want to ask any questions about those or have anything to say? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 13.3, the Audit Committee minutes. And what I'll do is I'll do the first recommendation first, and then there is a 2A or 2B, whoever would like to move the second recommendation. The first recommendation is that council receive and note the minutes of the Audit Committee meeting held on the 2nd of May, moved by Councillor Glasbrook, seconded by Councillor Robertson. Do either of you want to speak to receiving and noting the minutes? Does anybody have any questions about receiving and noting the minutes? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. I have recommended 2A and 2 there, if somebody would like to move them. Councillor Glasbrook?
I'm happy to move 2B.
2B. Do I have a seconder for 2B? Councillor Kemp? Councillor Glasbrook, do you want to speak to it?
Yes, I will speak to it. I had a bit of a conversation with our Manager of Finance before the meeting. Although there was some concern from the Audit Committee in relation to one item in particular, which is on this in this agenda item, in relation to the action list and the council being a little bit behind in some of their audits. I don't believe the Audit Committee were that concerned. I think it was really just an issue that they wanted to make the council aware of that there is this, slight issue there. This particular one, as it says in the agenda item, will be reviewed within the next few months. And when the new corporate system comes in place, it will be a totally different process. So not 100% sure that spending that money would be a good use of council's administration's time and money at this stage. So I'm just happy to move part 2B. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glasbrook. Councillor Kemp, did you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I guess the only thing I have to say is the question around the 6 months vacancy of that position. Do we wait that long to fill positions? I'm not quite sure. Was there a demand or no demand, or I'm not quite sure why, it took 6 months.
Through the Mayor, so no, that's not normally the case. The position was recruited and advertised and was offered, but that person was in another position at that point in time that then needed to be recruited and so on. So there was a bit of a delay in having people move along in roles, and the priority was given to where the workload was most required at that point in time, knowing that sample testing and other controls were in place to mitigate any high-level risks.
Follow-up question, if I may. Do we advertise outside externally as well? Didn't get sufficient people?
Yep. So we did advertise internally and externally at the same time for that position, and someone was offered the role, but again, it was just that on-flow effect of then having to recruit for their position because they were an internal stakeholder at that point in time.
Any further questions in relation to recommendation 2B? that case, I'll ask your hands. I'll put the motion to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's passed unanimously, carried unanimously. Subsidiaries and representative reports. The recommendation is that council receive and note the representative report in May. Someone move that way. Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconded that. Thank you, Councillor Robertson. Do either of you have any questions or any comments about the May report? No, Councillor Robertson. Does anybody have any questions or comments about the report? In that case, all those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. The mayoral report, recommendations that council receive and note it. Someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Robertson, and seconding that. Thank you, Councillor Littley. Do either of you have any questions or comments about the mayoral report? Does anybody have any questions or comments? Those in favour? Those against? There are no elected member reports for May. There are no matters of urgency. There are no questions on notice. Are there any questions without notice? Councillor Littley?
Just in light of seeing that there's been some forums discussing potential elected or people running for the election in November. Just wondering, has the council got a schedule of our own elected member forums coming up, and when might that be that they might be put in place? Is it?
My understanding is that Kyle is working on a schedule at the moment, that council will be holding some public. They're also doing some forums online and public face-to-face ones. I'm not sure when that schedule's going to. Do you know that, Kelly?
Not the exact date, but we are waiting on the Electoral Commission to provide some marketing for that particular item as well. But we have been working on in the background a plan with all the different bits and pieces we really need to do in terms of all the way down to what rooms we need to book for candidates going forward. So we would be looking to finalise that plan in the next couple of weeks, but then awaiting the Electoral Commission to provide their guidelines to us.
Just a supplementary question. Is there any criteria around that when those meetings could be held? As far as, are there any restrictions as to when, be it, I guess, canvassing or for starting that process?
So through the Mayor, there are restrictions and criteria around canvassing and campaigning. We were planning on sending out just prior to caretaker period, essentially the slides that were held from the social media training that offered some guidelines in regards to that to current elected members as a reminder of what can be and can't be done. Basically, we'll be dealing with the guidelines that the Electoral Commission puts out in terms of those key dates.
Councillor Robertson, you had questions without notice?
Yes, a couple. Yeah, just confirmation. The visitor centre and the whale centre. I think we had it earlier, but we don't yet have an opening date for those. For any activities at all, it's only going to be open for, not for one or the other, but or any other activities. It'll be open once and for all for everything, is it?
Through the Mayor, that's correct.
Okay. And it's not going to be until. Second question. Are we calling that building the elected member update that we got last Friday talked about it being the engine shed. Well, I know that it used to be called the engine shed donkeys years ago, but I haven't heard it referred to as the engine shed because my understanding is that the branding on the building would be that it was both the Whale Centre and the Visitor Centre. Personal preference should be that the bigger sign would be that it's the Whale Centre, South Australian Whale Centre. But, you know, we have investing a heap of money into the Visitor Centre, so let's get
Mark, what's the branding on it?
So the council 12 months ago resolved to refer to the building as the Victor Harbour Business Centre, and so incorporating the South Australian Whale Centre. The reference in the report, I believe, would have been the Railway Goods Shed building, which is its historical name, the building itself. We are working on a signage plan at the moment for the external parts of the building. Given the change of location, we are proposing to put 2 large flagpoles out the front of the building that will actually have both a banner for the Whale Centre, but also a banner for the VIC, which will highlight the presence of the building. Obviously, all our digital collateral and print collateral will have the location on it, as well as we're hoping to run a series of activations at the front of the building. So the building itself, whilst we are planning to use the plaza space at the front more readily to draw people to that area.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. I have a couple of questions on the penguins. Director Hayter, through the Mayor, playing and those works going at present.
Through the Mayor, very well. I think we've got approximately 3 days left. The Penguins seem to be going, 3 days left to complete the job. The Penguins seem to be going well. I don't know if you know that we've done some additional things to try and support the Penguins with Stephen's, on Stephen's advice. One is to put soundproofing blankets over one of the burrows. We had a pair of penguins move in was that last Saturday or the Saturday before? So we've put sound attenuation blankets over that burrow. The other one was to put carpet across the tracks at night so the penguins could traverse the tracks safely. But those carpets were only laid for one night, and the volunteers reported back that the penguins were actually afraid of the carpet, so we removed the carpet. So only a few days left and it should be complete.
Yes, it looks like this year that the breeding season has started early, and yeah, there's not much evidence from the nightly monitoring or any other evidence like fecal matter on the tracks where the birds are crossing. Second issue to acting CEO through the Mayor. Have you received any reports from the Department of Environment on necroscopies of the dead penguins that we had from earlier this month? There's a lot of community issues and talk about,
Perhaps Kathy?
concern about what's going on with what was the cause of death of those birds.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, the CEO did write to the CEO of Dew, and the CEO of Dew came back pretty quickly and said, thanks for highlighting it and bring it to his attention. He was going to follow that up promptly and make sure they were done, but we haven't had the results yet.
Okay, so given that that's 3 weeks ago or more, the CEO wrote to the CEO of Dew, could we have the CEO write again to Dew to request a report back from him? How many of the 20 plus bird carcasses that were delivered to the Dew Victor Harbour office, how many of them have had necroscopies done? Does the DEW have any updates on what the causes of death were? When will all the necroscopies be completed for the carcasses that were delivered the due office? And could the council please have full copies of the microscopy reports, records and the distribution to the residents?
Yep, we can follow up with the CEO of Due on that and ask.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, given that most of our volunteer areas are down on numbers, my question is, would it be possible for our publicity people to compile a volunteer recruitment video, for want of a better name, using some of the enthusiasm, using some of our current volunteers and their enthusiasm for what they do? I'm not sure what the budget implications of that would be, though.
I wonder whether or not, Councillor Henderson, they could take that on notice, or it could be a motion without notice to look at the budget implications of undertaking a volunteer promotion video.
Thank you, Mayor. I almost waited to bring it up as a motion without notice, but I thought I'd introduce it as a question first.
Yeah, I think because there's budget implications associated with that, because that will take staff time, then we might need to do that as a motion without notice. Are there any further questions? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Just through yourself to Director Hay. The tramline island on budget savings coming our way, because if we're doing it within house.
Through the Mayor, no, there are no savings, Councillor Kemp, and I believe we've augmented our internal folks with the some other labour, just because we've had some of our internal folks go down with COVID. So there are definitely no savings.
Thank you. With the railway goods shed with the visitor incentive development, I noted in the last members update there was ongoing problems within the building. It's been brought to my attention that we're still having trouble with white ants in the flooring and the beams now. Is that correct? That's part of the problems of why there are some delays in finishing. And of course, if it is true, how widespread are they? Because the whole premises is all fantastic timber, so it could cause a major problem.
Through the Mayor, thank you, Councillor Kemp. Yes, there is evidence of significant termite damage there. The termites are no longer present. The termite damage is to the beams and joists of the mezzanine. These beams, joists will need to be replaced. Being designed by the building designer.
And following on from Councillor Henderson's issues around volunteers, the upgrade of the Coral Street art space impact, because upgrading the space is actually getting the volunteers to move into a storage room, I've been told, but may be converted to some type of outlet. But it appears that the volunteers are not over happy about the whole process, and some members of the volunteers then are not returning. So it is a problem, our volunteers at the moment. So I'm just wondering how the council will address this, apart from Councillor Henderson's motion without notice, hopefully.
Through the Mayor, yes, there is a move at the moment to relocate the customer service area for the information centre to the rear part of the Coral Street art space. This is a temporary move, given that the council have funds in its current budget to do some minor works on the customer service counter area, but also some exhibits in the space. This is a temporary arrangement. It is unfortunate that the building works aren't finished at the railway goods shed building. This wouldn't be an issue otherwise. We spent a lot of time, and our staff a lot of time with the volunteers explaining the context of this and the fact that there are two voluntary groups that exist. We're trying to work through and provide I guess, some movement in a few areas, particularly the Coruscant art space. We don't really want to hold up some of those works by virtue of delaying this move. We need to free up the front can area. It's a temporary move. Operationally, it'll work fine. I think the origins of probably the discontent, if that's such a thing, is just the longevity of the works happening at the Goodshed building, that being finished. So as I've said, our staff are doing a lot of work with our volunteers. We're providing a briefing on Wednesday to our volunteers to work through and to explain where we're up to and where we're going. When we move into the new facility, we'll have a lot more opportunity to spend more time with our volunteers and also have the facility to actually engage them in a more deeply meaningful way. As you'd appreciate, we've gone through with these two groups of volunteers a substantial change, both in staffing personnel and location. Unlike any other unit of the council that we have volunteers involved in, we have, by virtue of the changes, turned their world upside down. We acknowledge that it's a lot of their life. Volunteering is an important part of their life, but the future is looking bright. And I think once we speak to them on Wednesday, provide some more detail, it'll give them comfort going forward.
Thank you. And my last question, Mayor, is with the Main Street Stage 4 upgrade, has council or going to provide any support to traders, and has council questions from traders?
I can't respond to the donations from traders, but I can respond to council support. As you may recall, we provided to members a couple of weeks ago an update of a number of measures that the council are currently implementing to drive foot traffic to the Main Street area during that period of time. We are working on some extra ones and we'll be presenting to the council at the 7th of June CASPAC meeting, outlining how we propose to support the traders through this period of time, and so happy to work through with members in more detail some of those measures. There are a number of things we're actually doing at the moment. Events is a very strong focus. The introduction of the artisan markets over the forward period, plus Illuminate Adelaide, probably two notable major inclusions in our programming this year that will drive foot traffic to the area. But obviously there's a series of other measures we will bring to the council in the near future that will assist the traders with over the next period of time, which will obviously be difficult.
Thank you. Just a supplementary question to that. So providing support to the traders in that context, but council is not providing any physical support by doing anything for a trader or helping them out in some way or doing some construction work for them to help support them while they go through this period of being disrupted. Council hasn't planned anything or got anything planned.
I'm not sure what you mean by doing some construction work. Councillor.
Well, that's what I'm just trying to work out.
Streets construction work.
Yeah, we were talking about earlier on about potentially compensation for traders for being disrupted and things like that. And I think Kathy was saying that she'll come back maybe with some ideas or concepts or things like that. I'm just wondering if they have come back with anything which they may support. If a trader said, look, I need some help or some financial support for doing part of my frontage of my building because of the upgrades, would that be supported or not as part of this process? Because we haven't decided yet or haven't thought about what we could do for the traders because of the disruption.
So through the Mayor, if I may, the measures we are drafting are not specific to any one trader. They're for the benefit of all. You may recall in the update we provided to members a couple of weeks ago, one of the concepts that is on the table that council could choose to bring back the facade grant program, which would assist traders with providing minor upgrades to their building and or supporting outdoor dining furniture. The other matter that the council will need to consider is the deferral of fees for outdoor dining and street trader permit fees. The third matter we're kind of working through the detail on is looking at potentially some sort of customer consumer incentive scheme to draw customers to the main street through some sort of grant mechanism, but we're just working through the details how that could work, and that's what we're proposing to present to the council on the 7th of June. I guess the reality for the traders is they'll need foot traffic. And cash flow will be absolutely key during this period of time to get the customers moving through their doors. And that's kind of the focus of our attention.
Thank you very much.
Not at this point, no, that I'm aware of. But again, that can be discussed at the workshop on the 7th of June, if the members seek to do that.
I'm aware many of the traders actually don't pay rates. That the people that own the buildings don't even live in Victor Harbour. So rate reduction might be something that doesn't actually come back. There are no motions on notice. Councillor Henderson, you've got a motion without notice. That administration investigate budget implications of a volunteer video to encourage increasing volunteering in the City of Victor Harbour. Yep.
Yes, thank you.
Does someone want to second that? Thank you, Councillor Littley. Do either of you want to speak to it? Or is it self-explanatory?
I think it's self-explanatory. These videos don't need to be very long at all. 30 seconds to a minute and a half most is quite sufficient.
Thank you. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? Carried, thank you. It's without notice. There are no confidential items, and so at 20 to 9, I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much, everyone. I think there's some really great debate in that, and thank you very much for your professionalism and debating style.